Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
We are recording. Bat Collazo, my homie, my friend.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to Weird Web Radio.
Thank you, Lonnie. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. Like I said, just to see your face. And for everyone out there,
yes.
Haha, I don't record the video. No.
Which is good because I'm a little shiny today.
My
face is a little shiny.
All that corn sweat I keep hearing about on the news. Making everything worse. For people who don't know, I'm going to read the bio that you sent me. And that way people have an idea who you are if they don't know already. So Bat Collazo is a queer, multiracial heathen, pagan, and witch with lifelong enthusiasm and close to 15 years of active practice. Do we need to add any years to that now? Is it still 15?
It's still about it's around there. I think I'll shift it. I'll shift it when I hit 20.
Let's make it almost 2 decades. Close to 2 decades. As an animist, the core of Bat's practice is relationality. That's a hard word, dude.
I'm sorry I did this to you.
With others and others with a capital O as complex, real people with agency. Same. Bat strives to resist authoritarianism, all that bullshit that we're experiencing in the world right now, abuse and oppression, and to help build freer, healthier ways of being. Bat's magical focus includes, but is not limited to, Germanic spirituality, traditional fairies, the dead, the land, and with formal oath commitments to the Norse god Loki, Robin Goodfellow, and the folkloric Jack. Bat is a published author and poet, the editor of Blood Unbound, a Loki devotional, and a work-in-progress classical singer. Yeah, we talked about that.
We did. Heavily work in progress.
We're not singing today. No. Which is, in part, a devotional act for Odin, giver of breath. For more publications, info, and events, please check out batcollazo.com. That is BATCOLLAZO.com. All right, that's it. See ya. No,
that's me. Goodbye.
Okay, since first time here,
yes,
and I warned you.
You did.
First thing I like to ask is, have you ever experienced a haunting or anything that could be called like paranormal phenomena?
Yes. So many times that it's hard for me to narrow on a particular example. But yes, to answer your first question, absolutely.
So many. Like, let's start. What's an early one?
Ooh.
Or a really cool one?
Yeah. Early. Well, this isn't super early, but it is relatively, let's say it was before my formal pagan practice. How about that?
I was going to ask, was it before or after you became a pagan?
Well, that part of that depends on how you define when I became a pagan, right? Because I think I always had it in me, like even as a little kid, terms of interest, but yes, totally. But like the full awareness, this would be before. So I was a teenager, and I started washing dishes in a nursing home. And my first day, I was being trained by this guy who was like ex-military and like a filmmaker who was also working in this nursing home with me washing dishes.
He was also a chain smoker, wasn't he?
Probably, yes.
No.
Yeah. So he's training me. We're in the kitchen. Again, very first day. We were standing in front of just like a shelf where they had put these plastic what are they called? Like pitchers, you know, for ice water or whatever. And they were all just like very neatly lined up on this shelf. Nothing super precarious. As we're standing there talking, I realize I'm not on video, so people can't see my arm waving. Right. Okay.
Animated story.
Yes. So we're facing each other. The shelf is sort of in my peripheral. And as we're just talking about whatever, one of the pitchers lifts up. So it doesn't just fall. It actually raises up into the air and gets flung across the room, like, so just like up and over, and just like crashes and cracks on the floor. And I was just like, what the fuck? And he looks at me and he goes, oh, by the way, I should have said this before, this place is haunted. And I was like, yeah, I noticed. Like, I did notice that just now.
Oh yeah. Like, by the way. Yeah. By a mad one, apparently. Holy shit.
So I would say that was one of the earlier, like pre-pagan, pre-intentional witchcraft events that was particularly physical, right? Mm-hmm. Like I had much earlier ones that were a little more ambiguous, like, or in that sort of sleep and wakefulness kind of dream state. But this was just a plastic pitcher getting thrown across the room with no apparent explanation. Like, yeah.
As it happens sometimes. That's pretty wild.
It was wild.
That is very wild. Yeah. So you said you've had a lot of these kinds of experiences. Mm-hmm. Have they picked up with frequency or something as you've gotten into your own magical practice and spiritual work?
I would say I wouldn't say that the overt physicality of it has increased over time necessarily. Like I wouldn't say I often have experiences that are so, you know, tangible in that sense.
Dangerous.
Right. Well, I mean, we were okay, but this is part of my.
We were okay.
This is whether this is a strength or a flaw depends on who you ask. But I have historically and continue to be pretty chill about it. Like, I'm just like, well, I mean, I didn't get hurt. Like, so I'm not worried about it. Like, nobody stabbed me or anything. Like, I'm
going to make that the title of the episode. You know? Like, nobody stabbed me or anything.
I didn't automatically assume that it was hostile. I was just like, well, somebody is just throwing this thing, but not at me. So
I love that attitude.
Right.
Season 109 while we were friends.
Yes. I would say that I have a better grasp of before someone otherworldly resorts to something that overt. I think I now have a better grasp of intuition, or sort of the ability to sort of psychically connect and get a sense of what might be going on, without, I mean, with many exceptions, I'm sure. But I think generally what has happened over time is that people don't always have to resort to such over-the-top gestures, which probably takes a lot of energy, to be honest. Right?
Sure,
like, they don't necessarily have to resort to that to get my attention anymore. With many important exceptions, as everything does.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple instances of things similar to that, but most of the time it's more of a feeling or a sense of something, or, you know, like lights being weird for no good reason and stuff like that. No, that's fun. Yes. That's very fun. That's fun. So how'd you end up in your pagan journey? What got you started down that path?
Yeah. A lot of different things. So, kind of as you said, as probably most of us have, had it in me as a little kid. Like I was always curious about things like magic. I would say one of the earlier sort of heathen experiences, although I didn't identify as a heathen at the time, was I had a friend. I must have been maybe 7 or 8 years old. I had a friend around the same age, same class, who worshipped Loki. So this little kid who that is who introduced me. I don't think that I knew anything about the Norse gods before meeting this other kid. And I would say that was my first sort of experience with that kind of lore, but also with that kind of energy, right? Which I talk about a little bit in the book Blood Unbound, that this kid was also the first person I had met as a kid who was like, I'm not a boy or a girl, I'm something else. And this kid was also like, we're both so young, but this kid was like, I have crushes on boys and girls and like anybody in between, like, which was completely unheard of to me at the time. I was raised Catholic. I hadn't really I didn't have.
You're saying they don't teach this in the Catholic Church?
Tragically. Yeah.
What? No.
What? Yeah.
All those robes and incense.
Right. So this was, I guess, in hindsight, I sort of feel like this kid who, for the record, I have since talked to as an adult, and that's been fun also. But my experience with this classmate of mine was that I think in hindsight they were carrying a lot of that Loki energy anyway, right? They were disrupting my life with new things that I hadn't ever thought about before, in a very gender fuckery kind of way, in a very queer way. And helping me question things. So that was sort of my first very direct contact with the idea of Norse beliefs in the modern day. This person was also a person of color too, which was great for me. Like that I encountered this for the first time. Not in, let's say, like one of those very corrupted white supremacist contexts, but right. in somebody that that I could really admire. Later, so in my, I would say, late teens, early 20s, I started approaching magic in general. I think not dissimilar, if I remember correctly, Lonnie. I mean. Perhaps I don't remember correctly, but I started approaching things like chaos magic. I was reading a lot of that. I read like what is it, like Frater UD, like sigil magic. Oh, okay. I was reading a lot of I was reading a lot of ceremonial stuff like Crowley, which I never was very interested in practicing, but I thought was interesting, right? Like, so I was just reading a lot, and I eventually got to heathenry from sort of reading that, as well as some more like folk magic, witchcraft type stuff. It just took me a while. I circled around heathenry for a long time before really landing on it, in part because I knew about a lot of the racism, and I didn't want anything to do with it, but I ended up getting right with myself, I guess, about I don't have to do that. I can be something very different from that. There are people practicing that are not like that, and deciding to dive in anyway, with of course a lot of enthusiastic encouragement from non-human people as well. like in my experience, I felt that the gods and some other spirits were very interested in me opening the door for them to enter my life. Yeah.
I love that. I was, when you were talking about, this encounter with this other kid who's like, hey, Loki is, it just made me remember the first time I really got like tapped into anything heathen. I had become obsessed with like Egyptian stuff. I think with any of us who watched, Unsolved Mysteries and stuff as a kid did, and convinced that, they're old, so that must be where the power is. I don't know. And I had found my way into chaos magic too. No, not quite yet. One of my friends just randomly asked me one day, he says, have you ever heard of a thing called Odin? And I went, Odin? Yeah, Odin. And I was like, no, why? What's that?
I love that it's not even who's that, it's what, like a thing. There's this thing. Like, what is that?
What is that? Is it like is there something wrong with your foot? What is it?
Odinitis. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I mean, you were lipping a minute ago. And he had heard it somewhere, and neither one of us really. He knew a little bit more than I did because I knew nothing about it. And that always stuck in my head. And it's not like I ran off and became a heathen at that point. Mm-hmm. The very next time I saw or flirted with anything heathen related, I was getting into runes really deep, but I ignored most of the anything religious about it. I just wanted to know how to make these cool looking symbols, do magic stuff. That's all I cared. I didn't give a shit about the history, the even the rituals are written. And I'm like, because I've been reading chaos magic too. I'm like, I know how to make sigils. These are just older ways to do sigils. That was what was in my head. So, I think I was 21 and somebody gave me the book Rites of Odin by Ed Fitch. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. But it was the next time I saw them, and I will say this for it, I flipped through it, and that was the first time I was exposed to many more of the Aesir and the Vanir and so on, the gods and goddesses associated with heathenry. And I don't know, I think that it was little slow exposures that led me down that road. Mm-hmm. It was racist and folkish dumb fuckery that kept pushing me back away from that road. So I guess you ran into the same kind of problems. You said, you've got these experiences of different deities and spirits and stuff, trying to open that door. Mm-hmm. How do you experience that? How do you discern that it's something, a god or a goddess or a spirit or something that's trying to communicate with you versus your own imagination?
Yeah. So I could probably write multiple dissertations on this question, right?
Like, I hope you do someday.
Yeah. That sounds great. Actually, yeah. First, I will say, which I feel you will probably agree with me, but I don't know. I do want to break down the dichotomy a little bit between imagination and a real experience because I agree. Yeah. I think here's what I'll say. Again, I could say a million things about this. I think that those are things like imagination, like that is a state of being, a creative tool that I think is part of, in my opinion, how humans can access beings like deity or ancestors or other worldly spirits, etc. Like, I think that is a useful skill, a useful tool in that toolbox, and I don't think that they're quite as separate as people would even like. Honestly, I think it even
yes.
It even on the other end I've noticed that there are a lot of artists who have access to what I would perceive as more spiritual type inspiration, but are a little bit freaked out by the idea that they might not just be making it all up themselves in their head. Right? Like,
right.
But anyway, all that said, that for me, the sort of proof, like how can I tell, like, it is a very intuitive process, right?
Yeah. And it's not proof,
right. Exactly.
I'm not asking you how do you prove it or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to feel that way. And it might've been laziness in the way I asked, because, when I say, how do you discern between, is it, really this communication from something other versus your own imagination? That is how most people would frame that question. And totally. I'm so glad you addressed imagination, because in reality, I'm a hypnotist. Like, what is imagined has profound effect on you. It is real. It is happening inside your mind at minimum. People can literally kill themselves with a heart attack, working themselves into panic with their imagination. You can change beliefs and habits and experiences of the world. You can transform your relationship to your body and pain and everything through the imagination, because imagination is a word that has been way too bastardized. It's been sold as something bad almost, or, like not real, but it's 1000% real.
Yes.
So, but when do you know that it's the spirits talking?
Right. Yes. No, totally. And that discernment. And there is, so I would say, again, I'm hedging a little bit, but it is context dependent. I will say some things for me, super intuitive in my body. A lot of times, particularly with deities, I feel like deity energy, particularly if it's a deity that I feel I have a really, strong connection to or ability to access, like sometimes I will get like full body chills. I'll start spontaneously crying, which doesn't usually happen. Like, it's not even a bad thing, right? But it's sort of like, okay, I'm reading a story about Loki, and it's a story about Loki. It's fine, whatever. I'm reading something about Loki and I feel that Loki is speaking to me through it. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, why is there snot just pouring out of my face? Right? Like, it feels very physical in some ways. Often other discernment things for me, particular messages that like are not intuitive to me, things that I would not necessarily be like, oh yeah, like I would tell myself that. It's like, wait, this seems like really strange advice. Like, what's happening? Or other kinds of verification, like divination tools, or particularly on the nose synchronicities in a totally unrelated context where things just start piling up. And I think all of these examples, it's tricky. Spirit stuff is always tricky, right? Because in my experience, it is hard to describe in words sometimes why something feels very real and why something else might be like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. Like, I don't think this is accurate. And
is that Raven here from me?
Right.
Just a raven.
Right. Or is it actually a crow? Like
yeah, right. Here it's crows. 1000% here it's crows.
Yes. So I would say, I know this is, I don't know. I feel like it's a non-answer a little bit, but it depends. That's fair. And in hindsight, the ways that I know that I was, let's say, right, or it was the right choice for me, like in terms of discernment, is that it keeps happening, that connection deepens, that things over time, over years in my life, like go in like a better and better direction based on the influence of these messages that I was receiving, or that sort of reciprocal connection with particular beings. It's sort of something that also builds up over time. I don't know if this makes sense, but I think like a one-off sort of fleeting discernment is less important, as well as more difficult to discern. Like if some random spirit that I don't have an ongoing relationship with is trying to tell me something, let's say in like a haunted building or something, right? Like if I get that wrong, if I think someone's talking to me and it's just my imagination, quote unquote, air quotes with just or whatever, right? Or the opposite, right? Like it is like genuine communication. Like that's not a super high stakes discernment anyway, necessarily. I think it's easier for me to look back in hindsight, let's say again with the Loki example, and be like, I know that Loki, I in my subjective experience know that some of these experiences I've had were for sure Loki, because of how they over time have continued to build on that from that moment into huge parts of my life that like I would have never expected. It just sort of becomes a feedback loop of Loki where I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Loki because it sort of knocked over a Loki domino and then the whole thing is I don't know if that makes sense, but like, yeah, but the short answer for that very long, maybe not totally coherent answer is it's context dependent and it takes practice. It takes practice and it also takes a certain amount of letting go of some of, I don't know, some of the inclination to, as I think you're referencing, like attribute absolutely everything to something that must be spiritually meaningful, while also balancing with the fact that we're in a society that really belittles any form of non-Christian mysticism or spiritual experience. So balancing out this, like, yes, things can be meaningful and external from real spirit people, and also not everything is a sign.
Yeah. When I get to talking about this kind of thing with people, I love to hear different viewpoints on it. And because it can work the whole range from you must be diligent in knowing your own inner voice from the voice of the other. And the only way to do that is through rigorous practice in the beginning. And there's some degree of truth to that. And then there's the other end of the spectrum. And I often think of Kat Heath for this. I don't remember where I heard Kat say this. I don't know if I read it on one of Kat's blogs or Facebook posts or internet. I just don't remember. I just know it was Kat.
Yeah.
and it came down to Kat was making the point that the poo-pooing it all has gone too far. The pendulum needs to swing the other way, that we don't give the magic enough credit. We don't give the spirits enough credit. Like we are so ready to find ways to say, no, that wasn't real, or that didn't happen. When in fact, we're falling into that trap of wiping our own magic away, essentially. I don't like that.
Totally. I agree with that. And I try to find some kind of balance between those two for myself, and who knows what that looks like any given day, or if that kind of balance that I have achieved is right for anybody else. Yeah, I just know that I see trends over time. I see how magic is real. I see how the really important caring relationships I have with various other than human people, I see how they're real and working in the world, in my life. So that's the balance for me.
You know, for me, I find the balance in, like, you know, if I've just done some kind of bloat or ritual or something, and I've called on Odin, for example, at any point in that, and then I go leave and I hear or see crows, I don't think they're necessarily there for me. I also don't necessarily think they're not there as some kind of thing for me to notice either. Right. You know,
it can be both at once. Yeah.
It can be both these things. Right. And if I'm out on, like, on days I don't go to the gym, I like to go on long walks outside. Not now, it's terribly hot, but like that's my favorite thing to do. And on my walk, I'll walk 2.5-3 miles usually, and it won't happen frequently. But if a certain squirrel is going up and down a tree and turns to look at me, and I catch that, it will spark the whole story of Yggdrasil in my mind.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm immersed in the Nordic story world, and that's the spiritual thing for me.
Yes.
And it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it didn't have to be something that was sent for me. It sparked something in me because I do the groundwork of practice and study. Yeah. Same thing for if a certain tree appeals to me. I feel compelled sometimes to just simply go touch one because and I wish I could explain why. And all that does is it makes me remember how, we know that trees and groves and things of that were sacred to our pre-Christian ancestors, because you had local priests writing to each other, complaining that these fucking people won't stop going to that tree or going to that well, Yes. And I just feel more in tune with something that is more alive in that spiritual flow.
Yes.
In those moments, that's what it deepens my own spiritual practice.
Yeah. I love that. And you're making me think also of, I forget what story it is, but there's a saga or an Old Norse lore story where I feel like some heathens have left some offerings for Thor, and some of the Christians are making fun of them. They're like, look, like mice are eating them. Like Thor is not taking that offering. And the heathens are so not bothered by that. They're like, like that's normal. Like it's not this, it doesn't have to be this split from yes, mice are doing their thing, going about their normal mice life, right? Like, and also Thor has accepted our offering. Like those don't have to be in contradiction with each other. Thor doesn't have to appear manifest physically and shove all this bread in his mouth or whatever, like for it to be real. Like,
but I would love to see it.
I mean, he might want to do that, but it's okay.
So excited and shit myself at the same time. Yeah. And anytime offerings and stuff come up, we've talked about it here. I like to remind people, one of my favorite things from the Havamal addresses a question I always see. What if I offend the gods? What if I don't give them enough? What if they don't accept my offering? What if they, there's a thing in the Havamal that says, essentially, it's better not to give at all than it is to give too much. Like it's simple, folks. You do not have to complicate that part. I promise. It is simple. It's just is. So you name drop Loki about enough times to invoke him at this point.
Yeah. Sure.
Let's get into Loki a little bit. First of all, Loki, I think, is probably more popular than has been in the past because of the Marvel movies, and especially the Loki series on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I really loved that series, and I imagine that's doing some good PR for Loki. But that is not the Loki from myth,
right?
Yeah. So let's dig into it. Who's Loki? How did you come back around to Loki after hearing it from that kid all those years ago? Yeah. How did that develop into the devotional kind of practice you have now?
Yeah. So it's so funny because essentially what happened is that I was shit talking a fictional version of Loki.
Yeah.
And or like a fictional sort of trickster type, not even explicitly Loki, but I sort of mention Loki and some other figures, and I was sort of just casually being like, oh, but like you in this fictional context, like you can't really trust someone like this or whatever, and this actual Lokian. So again, this was like, maybe my late teens, early 20s. This actual person who worshipped Loki was like, like, that's fine, but I just want you to know that like I feel kind of weird about what you just said, because like a lot of people say that about the actual Loki, and I worship him, and he's actually really trustworthy for a lot of people in their lives, like their experience of him. And it was this moment where I was like, oh shit, you know what? You're right. Like I forgot that was the thing. I forgot that I knew this already from this kid that I met when I was a kid. And just this person sort of very kindly kind of calling me out and being like, careful how you talk about like these actual spiritual beings. Like I get you're talking about people's writing and whatever, and that's fine. But, some of us really care about these actual beings. And I was like, oh, you're totally right. And that completely sent me down this rabbit hole back into an interest, revived interest from my childhood, in Norse lore, in Loki specifically, in Loki's family. So that person was a very good advocate for Loki.
So your first experience was the kid was very positive. Then your next experience is pretty positive.
Yes.
I mean, how long are you exploring in the early relationship, getting to know Loki?
Yeah. So
before you run up against the bullshit, the everyone, the faction that does not like Loki, that demonizes Loki, says he's the heathen devil, etc.
Right.
You know all.
Yes. Yeah. So that was very quick, right? And I was sort of buying into it by accident, even just when I was talking about fiction, right? Because I was still sort of like, oh, figures that are known for. I don't know, this sort of the idea of the trickster archetype or whatever, even at the time, I sort of was a bit ignorant, and I was just like, oh, be careful. Like you can't really trust. And I'm like, that's not, I wouldn't say that today. How about that? But I very quickly became aware of, you're right, this faction that was very, it still is very opposed. Very prevalent. Yeah, they're out very there. Opposed, very, very opposed for various reasons. Some of them better reasons than others. Regarding Loki and his family, and then simultaneously, right, I became very aware of this misuse of Norse everything in these white supremacists, like actively neo-Nazi violent contexts. And right. Both of those things, I would say that latter, the racism component, and all these other forms of bigotry, of course, also, that is what made me wary of all of it, including Loki, even though most of the people in that camp hate Loki, right? Like there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, there's a strong Venn diagram overlap, not exclusively, but a strong Venn diagram overlap between people who are using Norse spirituality for nefarious purposes and people who think Loki is the evil incarnate, basically. Mm-hmm. Now, there are lots of people who fear or dislike or actively avoid Loki who are not white supremacists, but yeah. So I encountered that very quickly, very, very quickly. I was immediately very compelled, again, by Loki. Like, so the anti-Loki sort of Loki hate, that didn't bother me very much. It was just sort of okay, but he and all these other beings and this spirituality in general are associated with, unfortunately, things that are actively against my values. And it took me, I'd say, a couple of years before I found more communities of people who shared my values, which in the sense of queerness is great, oppression is bad, like that, very right. Basic, so after a few years, that is when I felt then comfortable really stepping into a more Norse space. And Loki did bring me there. I know I have said his name, like you said, about 1 million times.
Yeah.
But
Loki is definitely in the chat.
Yes. And he may have been my gateway drug, so to speak, but he very quickly brought his entire extended family, which is literally everyone. So
yeah. I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's weird because my path into heathenry was all through runes and magic, right? And then I eventually run into the elhasablaze.com and the writings, particularly of Heimlich there, really got me excited. I finally felt like I found heathens. It made sense to me. And it was actually Heimlich who didn't push, but I said, like, who do we refer people to when they're looking for heathenry or something? And I don't want to send them to that place because there's a bunch of racist assholes there. I don't want to send them there because it's the same. And then, and so on. Or not as bad, but equally as arrogant, be the people who said, well, you're always telling you're doing it wrong because historically this, and we would always just say the Troth. We'd send them there. And then eventually I end up in the Troth, and I end up a steward in the Troth, and then I get elected to the board of the Troth. And we're at Troth Moot in Maryland in like 2018, I think it was. And I noticed after the Grand Sumble, a significant portion of the group there got up and walked away and went somewhere off to the darker area of the campground. And I asked Rob Schreier, who was the director at the time, trying to like, what do we call them historically if they don't have the name now? Like my brain farted. Anyway, I was like, where are they going? And as a group, like, there's nothing on the schedule. Like, where are they going? And he goes, oh, they're going off to do a thing for Loki.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, why? And I said, why isn't it on the schedule?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, Loki's banned.
Yeah.
Loki's what?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because Heimlich wrote a lot about Loki, like Loki cool and like magic using faces. Yeah. And
Snorri wrote a lot about Loki. Lots of people wrote a lot about Loki.
Right. Loki's in a lot of stories. And and then of course we had this whole big thing right then and there with everyone in attendance talking about how stupid this ban is to get rid of it, and we got rid of it.
Yeah.
And I try to make people understand, because you see people out there who go through the history and they criticize those moments in time. And I don't think what people understand, like, it's not like you join this thing or get in the board of it all and they're like, oh, and by the way, these spirits are banned. No, it was just something no one talked about it. Yeah. And since Loki wasn't important to my practice, I didn't notice the absence. I didn't notice. I didn't notice anything else because it just wasn't being talked about.
Yes.
Until that moment, it just seems so bizarre to me. Like, why would you ban the worship of something?
Yes.
That makes no fucking sense.
Which I just realized I didn't even answer your question about who is Loki, which might give some insight, here. Right? Some insight. Not that I think it's. I mean, everybody has already heard what I feel about this, but right. I will give a little bit of context. There are some reasons like that people are wary of working with Loki that I think are very reasonable. Right? Like, so Loki is complicated, which, you know, is true for literally everybody, right? Because if I'm like, who is Lonnie? Like, you know, you're not Lonnie. Is the human of guitars or whatever, you know, like the human of podcasts. Yeah. But yeah, so Loki. Right.
Please don't.
But yeah, Loki, Norse deity, often in Old Norse, words that are more masculine, like God or he and him, are used, but not exclusively. There are moments where Loki is shown shape-shifting in lore into sort of other shapes, other genders. Loki to me. Oh, what were you?
How did Odin get his horse?
Right. Yes. Loki to me is very much, depending on one's interpretation, I think associated with both creation and endings, and everything that is in the middle of that, which is literally everything that exists. But also, I perceive him as very associated with necessary disruption. I interpret Loki, not everybody agrees. A lot of scholars do agree. Depends. I see Loki as Lothar. So that is one of the creator gods in some of the lore, arguably, who gave something that is translated in different ways. I personally translate as something like lifeblood to humans. Loki and Loki's family is also very, very associated with endings too, with death. It's possible that etymology of his name is associated with closing or locking something. I mean, lock is false etymology, but closing, endings. He also has some lore, sort of, again, similar ideas, like if his mother is Laufey or Nal, which is sometimes about like needles and sewing. Loki is sometimes knots or untangling knots, like loopholes, but also, again, almost all of his children have some kind of death association. And I think those associations, this sort of infamous energy of disruption and change and shaking things up, and again, endings, tends to be more why some people have issues with Loki and his family, or are fearful. I think that there are some people who just don't like that Loki can be read as queer. Right. And that is like one of the reasons. But for a lot of other people, it's this sort of idea of Loki's affiliation, his family's affiliation with this, the lore about Ragnarok, right? This very apocalyptic event. And particularly for people who interpret that in a more literal and it hasn't happened yet kind of sense, rather than this more, for me, this much more cyclical microcosm or macrocosm sense. So like many little tiny Ragnaroks when something has ended, perhaps even disruptively in someone's life, but something new is beginning, versus, huge events. I think people tend to be fearful of change, which honestly, that's fair. Me too. Me too. I just leaned really hard into how can I have good relationships with people who help me change even when it's hard, or people who help me come to terms with the fact that death happens, that change happens, that things end. But Loki, Loki is fabulous and lots of different things, and also 12 dissertations worth of stuff.
Right. Yeah, Loki is a very complicated figure, I think, for a lot of people because of the trickster nature. But I mean, Odin could be construed as a trickster too.
Yes. And they're blood brothers. They're two peas in a pod is what I like to call them. They're
That's for sure. Yeah, and people who look at all of this stuff as myth literal, which at times I even struggle with a little bit. I laugh at myself. I shouldn't say I struggle. I laugh at myself because I can tell people, that's not literal. It's not like Loki really stood there and tied his nuts to a fucking another being and like, to entertain people and distract others. I get real wrapped up in the mysteries of like Odin hanging himself on the tree and stuff like that, as a real meditative exercise. But again, I don't think it's like Odin, the force, hung on, some great thing at the middle of the universe and a poet in, Iceland knew it.
Right.
I don't think it's quite literal. Yeah. No. So but I do think that's where a lot of the problems come from is when we'll take everything word for word, literally. And in part, I would say that's a product of the culture that we're all in. In a lot of the world, the religions have a holy and sacred, read it as truth book. And that's true in most of the Western world for sure.
Yeah. Well, whereas our stuff is a bunch of, things that were once oral history and spread across many different regions with many different variations, written down primarily by Christians. So there's a lot of wiggle room for a lot of things. But I honestly it's so funny. Actually, at one point after this book, the Loki book that I edited through the Troth, at one point after it got published, there was somebody, I don't know who this was, but somebody online was saying that like, oh, Bat is like anti-Loki, and I was like, excuse me, what? And I think it's because, again, like I fully acknowledge that Loki has, especially in these stories, like can be creepy, can commit harms in some ways, can be kind of scary, can be flawed, and yet also have like really beautiful, loving, life supporting, life creating, life affirming qualities also. So I think it's all of the above. But yeah, I just want to be clear that when I'm like, oh, well, their stories written down by Christians, I don't even necessarily think that I'm not trying to argue that the people writing this down were purely villainizing Loki. I'm like, I think all of these figures, including, and also every human, like, is complicated. We all have it in us, but we are not just good or evil.
Right. That's for, that's a fact. And the stories we're mainly referring to, if people don't know, are the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, or also called Snorri's Edda.
Yes.
They're out there, folks.
They are. And then there's little bits and pieces of various other, like Saxo Grammaticus has some stuff in there. And I will come back to the Marvel thing really quick. I will say that I do believe that gods and spirits can influence creativity if they feel like it, to grab up attention or whatever they feel like doing. And I will say that although I very rarely see Marvel Loki as almost anything like actual Loki in my experience, that last episode of the Loki TV show, there's even a fourth wall break where the actor like looks straight at the camera, so straight to the audience. Has it been long enough that I can spoil it? It's been out for a while, right?
Spoilers. So
the quote, I think the quote is referring to like a previous Marvel movie, but like what I saw, right, in this last episode, only this last episode for me, but is literally like the character named Loki breaking the fourth wall, staring at the audience and saying, I'm going to mess up the actual quote, but paraphrasing basically like, I'm going to do this for you, for all of us. And he's while staring into the camera. And what Loki is referring to is becoming this world tree, becoming Yggdrasil, like at the end of the episode, in opposition to fascism, in opposition to authoritarianism that's trying to control people's lives and the diversity of what people can do, the diversity of people's choices, like choosing to reject that and instead make a sacrifice, essentially bind himself, to promote the ability of humanity and other beings on Midgard to live freely, to make choices, to stand against something that wants to control people. And I'm like, that's very Loki. Like that last scene to me was, I was like, oh, the actual Norse god Loki is staring into the camera, breaking the fourth wall. That sounds about right.
Yeah, and there'll be the next season where you learn that he sacrificed himself to himself. And...
Oh my God. It's like, wait a minute. Hold on. Secret open. Yeah.
So let's see here. I was going to add to that, just because you brought up the creativity, like the gods could inspire creativity or something anywhere or however they wanted. I also think whatever the gods are, they are forces that are near humanity and involved with our journey through time and space intimately. I think we can, how should I say it? We can find ourselves entangled or connected or influenced by one of them without necessarily them intentionally doing it. I think that's common. I think that's how we get so many people going, I suddenly am interested in, I'm suddenly interested in. I think you've been touched by that power, but maybe not necessarily plucked on purpose. Like you it's just like, tuning forks in I think of in musical terms all the time. That's how I think about it. It's just like you were at the same beats per minute with that thing, like you were playing on the same chord. And you should notice that. You should explore that and then start building a relationship, and they will notice you. But maybe they didn't in the beginning. You were just at that same resonance for some reason, and it mattered in that moment, and you should explore it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I love it. And I love using music metaphors for magic also. I think it works really well in my experience. Yeah.
I watched too many Michio Kaku videos trying to make complicated quantum physics sound explainable to me. And he talks about vibrations and strings a lot. And I'm like, I understand that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because one of my friends used that kind of metaphor once. I was explaining this experience. I had a really intense spiritual experience at one point where I started shaking, like just very suddenly, sort of during this invocation. And my friend later was like, oh, it's like music. Like you're so attuned, literally, you're so attuned to what was happening that your body is literally vibrating in response to like,
yeah, it's amazing. And paying attention to those physical sensations, those physical experiences matter in all of this work. All too often we want to make it mental, or worse, we just want to make it Protestant and stand around and read a script. I think the more you engage all the senses, and especially the body and all of this, I think that's great.
Yes.
Yeah, your mileage will vary, but I think it's great.
And I also think it's great. And arguably the body is, depending on one's interpretation, one of the souls of the sort of soul complex within Norse belief. So the body is not this trash that like you just set aside to achieve spiritual enlightenment, right? Like it is a part of your spiritual journey. Yeah.
Right. That is absolutely right.
Hey gang, Lonnie here in production mode. Sorry for the audio quality. I just wanted to break in and tell you this is where the content warning matters. The following 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, will involve discussion that touches on topics such as child sexual assault, child grooming, association with known child predators by certain individuals. So please take care of yourselves. Please be safe. And I hope this is sufficient to keep you informed. Thank you.
We're at an hour. Do you want to get into the big
let's do it.
topic?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And we always talk too much, Lonnie. I don't know too much, but
not too much.
It's always happened. I think we could talk for like 5 hours, but nobody wants to sit and listen to it.
Easily.
Yeah. But yeah, sure.
So May 7th of last year, right? It was last year. My birthday, by the way, listeners.
Happy birthday, Lonnie.
There was an ongoing issue within the Troth with one elder of the Troth and head of the clergy, Diana Paxson. Probably wrote some of the books that you know and love and have read, or at least enjoyed. Maybe you hated all of her stuff for good or bad reason. Who knows? Very, very influential human being over modern paganism in general and heathenry in particular. And you were studying with Diana in the clergy program in the Troth, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. She was my clergy program mentor.
Yep. And then things changed.
Yes.
So let's start there.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The way that I even became her clergy program student was because I initially was very interested in clergy work with the Troth when I first joined, which was maybe I think a few years before the Loki ban was lifted. So I think 2019 Loki could be hailed at Trothmoot, and then a couple years after that they lifted the ban on Loki's children as well.
Right.
So in between there, right? Like I had been interested in clergy work. I had been working on the clergy program. I finished the sort of intro program that you needed to do before entering the clergy program.
Right.
I became uncomfortable with the idea of working towards a clergy role in an organization that would not, per their bylaws, allow me to publicly hail at their events. Like, I could do whatever I want on my own, but I became uncomfortable with potentially becoming clergy in an organization where I couldn't publicly in an official capacity talk about, for instance, how much I love Fenrir Sulfur or Angr Bodha or some of these other entities that were banned.
And I would point out real fast, that again, it's just, I think the issue with like this ban on Loki's children, it was something that was worded in the website and the bylaws and stuff. And when we removed the Loki ban, I don't think anyone thought of it.
Right.
I really think it was an issue of just operational blindness.
Yeah. Well, it was just in these old bylaws. And once the bylaws committee happened, then it got taken out. Right. Right. But it was just part of the formal process. Nonprofits have all kinds of really specific processes they need to go through. Yeah. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on hold. I'm going to pause in the clergy program. At the time, I wasn't being mentored by Dana, but she was running the whole thing, but I was not being mentored by her specifically. But I paused because I was like, let me pause until they change the bylaws. It'll just sit right with me, right? Like,
right.
So I believe it was 2023. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think. Yeah, it must have been. So Troth 2023, so June-ish was when the bylaws were changed, and then at that event people could openly hail these other beings. So I was like, great. I felt energized. I was like, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to do the clergy program, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't setting aside my own spiritual commitments to do it, which people were respectful of. Even Diana thought that was very respectful of that. Okay, so that is where I was like, all right, I'm ready to start again. And she assigned me to her because I didn't have a mentor. I had paused. She was like, okay, well, you will be my clergy trainee from this point forward. And that is where we started having Zoom calls with each other. We had spoken in person at the event, but we lived in different places. And so we began having Zoom calls. Right. So that's the background of sort of how I got there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened? And I guess before I get there, it's like, I know what happened.
Right.
I was very involved in this process.
You were one of my emotional support people, which I deeply appreciate. Yeah.
I love and appreciate you, and I've always got your back. You know that. I hope
I love you too,
that.
Lonnie. Yes.
Okay, but nothing came forward enough for people to know the degree and depth to which warnings needed to be issued. Right.
Like, yeah, like I have no idea what particular people knew or didn't know, but if people have concerns, my hope is that they will share them with people who need to know. Like, I'll just say, like, I didn't know until I found out some things that disturbed me. And when I did, I acted on it. But that, I felt that was my duty. Yeah.
Well, the big catalyst to draw attention to anything was an episode of a show called Last Chance U.
Yeah.
That's on Netflix.
Yeah.
I remember when you told me, hey, have you seen, like, you're asking me, like, have you seen this?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a
football show. Like, what are you talking about?
Why would Diana be on a football show?
Yeah.
So I guess, how did that episode come to your attention anyway?
Yeah.
In the beginning?
God. So I had been having Zoom kind of mentorship sessions with her, right, about clergy stuff. I quite honestly don't remember who told me, but somebody, because I don't like sports. First of all, I would have never found this on my own. No offense to anybody who loves sports.
I love sports, and I wouldn't have found it.
Someone, I literally have no idea who, was like, oh, Diana Paxson was interviewed in an episode of that, but like in a totally benign way, right? Like in a like, oh, did you know she was on that? And I was like, oh, I totally didn't know that. And I had Netflix at the time. And I was like, oh, that's fun. Like, like I've been like hanging out with this person over Zoom. Like we've been chatting a lot. Like that, that sounds fun to watch her media appearance. Right. So I sought it out specifically for that, like truly, because I was curious and because it was fun for me, sort of like, again, like I'm much closer to you, Lonnie, than I was to her. But like, if you were on Netflix, I don't care what the show is about. Like I'm gonna, which, that's a whole other, right. But like, I will seek out the media, of people I know because I'm curious and I want to support like what they're up to. Right. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up watching a football show. Like I didn't, so And what happened, that was around, I believe, around February 2024. Again, I went in this just being like, oh, this will be cute and fun. And I left having watched that with some serious concerns. They're like, and again, I'm very aware that TV is produced, that reality TV can do all kinds of, Franken edits and things. So I didn't want to make assumptions, but there were some specific things that were discussed on that episode, some specific things that she said on that episode that sat sat the wrong way with me, that immediately disturbed me, right? I wasn't going to jump to any particular conclusions, but they disturbed me. I did not like them to the degree that I knew that I needed to ask her about it, that I wanted to respectfully be, hey, I just saw this thing. These are some of the things you said on it. Like, this is actually pretty, I didn't like that. Like, can we talk about what you said? Can you give me some more context? Was that accurate? Mm-hmm. What are your beliefs in this area? Right. Yeah. And I ended up, also looking up some of the things that were referenced on that episode, because again, I didn't have all these details, but they were talking about things that had happened.
They were talking about, well, one, her relationship with Marion Zimmer Bradley.
Correct. Yeah.
Very public knowledge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Marion Zimmer Bradley, of course, we know was a sexual predator. We didn't know that until much later, but that's something that's known now.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and one thing I found.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, one thing I found disturbing about that association now was in that interview, there was so many things like still celebrating and promoting Marion Zimmer Bradley. Mm-hmm. And there was no, and Diana's words in that show seemed to suggest that she was defending her, saying, you know, like she understood all of that, but what was it? She was saying, like, I don't expect writers to be perfect people.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that particular quote, if I recall, like was specifically about someone named Walter Breen, who was a convicted child sexual abuser. I believe that they were specifically talking about him. I don't recall if Marion Zimmer Bradley ever had any formal, I think she died before any kind of formal legal stuff, but there were certainly allegations about her, and Walter Breen was convicted. I think one of the things, if I recall, was kind of talking about, one of the things on the episode that had disturbed me at the time was what I perceived as Diana talking about her sort of her hypothetical awareness of Walter Breen's desire to abuse children, but that she alleged that she wasn't aware that he was actually doing it, until he got convicted. And again, I'm not in Diana's head. I don't know what her experience was like, but she did talk about sort of being aware that he wanted to, and I want to be really specific that there's, in my values, like, yeah, I don't believe in, let's say, thought crime, right? Like, I don't want the government trying to punish people for thoughts that cross their mind, or anything like that. That said, within my values, it's really important to me to protect vulnerable people, such as children, from situations that might potentially harm them. And I felt concerned based on what she was saying in that interview about if she felt as seriously about these issues as I did. If she was aligned with me in terms of values or not. Again, not to say anything about her particular actions. I just don't know. But some of the things she said, I was concerned that they might have been dismissive towards the actual proven victims, for instance, of Walter Breen, like the real children who were harmed irreparably by actual violence. I wasn't sure if Netflix was just sort of misquoting her in a weird way, or if like we had some kind of significant values difference or something, right? Like I had concerns. I had significant concerns. Yeah. And then I talked to her.
Yeah. Yeah. And then things became unraveled very fast.
Yes. So I talked to her, and my concerns were not alleviated, but worsened. There were a lot of things she said during that conversation that were really inappropriate for anyone, but for a major leader in an institution, in a nonprofit, for a clergy person. There were a lot of different things happening in that conversation where, again, to be clear, she alleged that she has like not committed crimes, and I hadn't and still don't accuse her of any particular crime. But in terms of the things that she was saying to me while I was looking for some kind of reassurance that my clergy mentor was on even somewhat the same page with me about some of these really serious, real issues, I had significant concerns. I also then found several allegations in just doing a bunch of online research. Again, I'm not an investigator. Like I don't know the details. But between the active allegations that I found and how she was talking to me, I felt that she was not an appropriate clergy leader, and that I needed to do something about that in terms of informing the organization. And to go back to your birthday, right? So what ended up happening was that I did go through their standard process, and a few months later, when I found out that the process was going to involve the fact that they agreed with me enough to ask her to step down, but from, I believe, the clergy leadership role, but that they were going to give her the opportunity to train her replacement, and they weren't going to have her step down from some of her other roles, and they were going to keep her within the organization. And again, the quiet nature of that really disturbed me, because in some ways it felt like it was being treated as she had harmed me specifically in some way, and then they were gonna, kind of take care of that and reassign me someone. But really, my main concern, like, yes, many of her words harmed me. They were extremely upsetting to me. Like I lost sleep over it. But to me, it wasn't about me. It was about there is an obligation, I think, to, as much as possible, when people are aware of potential issues, to try to keep a community healthy and safe, particularly a community that can include children. And I was not convinced, based on her words to me, based on what she said in that Netflix episode, that she was in alignment with me about that goal. And so that is when, apparently on your birthday, happy birthday, Lonnie. I wrote a statement.
A long statement.
I'm not a concise person at the best of times.
That stood on business.
Yes. I wrote a statement trying as best as possible to explain what had happened, what my experience of it was, and some of the things that I had found online. Again, not things that I can verify myself, but rather that it's out there, and that people deserve to know this information, right? Again, whether or not what someone's going to do about it, I don't know. But I was like, yeah, I did not think that the way it was handled was appropriate in terms of a major organization. And so I felt like if the formal process, right, the quote unquote right way had led to basically, from my perspective, just sweeping a lot of things back under the rug, I was like, I need to put this out there. And so I posted it to the Troth, I think to the Troth Discord and to the Troth Facebook. I will say that the Troth leaders intentionally, they kept it up. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what was going to happen.
All discussion was allowed.
Yes. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if they would just delete it and kick me out or whatever. They did not. They left it up. I did not personally leak it publicly, but somehow it got to Reddit, so there's a PDF floating around out there of what I said. I didn't post it external to the Troth, but it ended up that way, which is fine. Like, such is the internet, right? Like,
and it's not like it's a small matter either. Like it was news that mattered. It mattered. So people did need to know.
Yeah. And so after that, the Troth leadership looked at the process again, and did, as is public knowledge also, they did eventually end up removing her from the organization.
Say full public knowledge. It was released as a public announcement through Troth official channels. She was removed from all positions, removed from elder status, and removed from the membership. I mean, it was a complete and total removal of all honor and title in the process. Yep. How did that feel when you saw that happen?
I was relieved by that. I mean, again, the whole thing was a shit show. It was a mess. I was very anxious, as you know, Lonnie, because Lonnie was one of the people who helped support me when I was trying to figure out, just trying to get my head on right, because it really shocked me. This was not on my bingo card for 2024. Let me put that particularly because I really liked her, right? Like, I had some really good, fun conversations. And from my perspective, I'm sure she feels differently, but from my perspective, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I really tried to be like, hey, let me try to understand where you're coming from, why you're saying the things you're saying. Please help me make sense of this in a way that will not lead to what it led to. But unfortunately, here we are.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I was very relieved. Again, there's lots of things happening all over the world. Lots of people have lots of different values. Some of them are dramatically opposed to mine. And once you know something, I feel like you got to do something about it. Like, very half a mall.
I agree.
Like,
yeah, people like to count that 127 a lot, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so I was relieved. That was what I was going for again, was I want people to be safe. Like, I want people to be safe and healthy. I want children to be safe and healthy and not be subject to exploitation. I'm not saying that Diana herself is I don't know what Diana herself is up to. I have no knowledge of that. What I do know is that that there were things that she said to me, as I elaborate in that PDF floating around, that I felt were totally unacceptable for a leader to communicate to anyone, much less to their clergy student.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. and through that whole process, I learned a lot through going through a lot of that too. I honestly was largely unaware of specific things to, like, how to explain what I was noticing. I guess I should say, when I heard people talk about issues like someone censoring the abuser. This whole scenario made me aware of situations I had seen like that and not know how to explain it. But that's what it was. It was someone who should be trusted to have the safety of the community, rather than do that, oftentimes be found centering the abuser. Very unfortunate. And I've seen that play out in other groups and with other people. And it's very heartbreaking to see it when it's someone everyone's supposed to be able to trust.
Totally. And, and to go back to one of the original quotes from the episode, and also like a current thing, I think, for instance, with something like media, it's tricky, right? Like it's tricky. Like, I know that there are Neil Gaiman allegations happening right now, right? Like, and I know that people are in a situation where they're like, should I, particularly with a living author, it's like, okay, well, we don't want this person to make money, but should I get rid of these books or whatever, right? Like, there's all these difficult questions to ask about that. And I think that is not, from my perspective, that's not an easy answer, right? Like, it's not. Like, I know somebody who is actually a survivor. This is very tragic and ironic, but like, who is a survivor of sexual violence, who got a Neil Gaiman quote on them as a way to heal, before this all came out. And I'm not going to tell that person, okay, you need to cover that up or not. Like, that's so personal. That said, just to be really clear, within conversations like that, what I think is still really important, wherever someone's landing on that, is this understanding that this kind of thing happens. That's real. I don't know. Again, these are allegations. Like, I'm not saying this particularly, but I tend to believe people when they talk about what is extremely prevalent in our society. And like you're saying, the priority needs to be like, how do we respect and not blame, not try to justify abuse that's happening to people, but really, really like support people who are impacted by violence. Yeah,
I agree.
And I think that you can struggle with media or whatever, while simultaneously supporting victims / survivors, and asserting how important it is for communities to stay as safe and healthy as possible.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a little over a year since all that happened. Has that had any impact on relationships that you had? Have you found, like, did you get hate mail? Did you get praise? I mean, like, how did that all play out for you in your life?
Yeah. So, I would say, generally speaking, everybody that I was closest to in that organization, which, by the way, like, I have stepped back quite a bit, but I didn't like outright quit, right? Like, I think they ended up doing the right thing. I just pulled back from a lot of the really big national heathenry, just for the time. But my closest people were very kind and supportive. There were people who I got closer to, like you. There are a few other people I won't name. Just, I don't know if they want me to name them, but like, there were people who really showed up for me in ways that I am extremely grateful for, and showed up for wanting accountability within these communities. there are some people who I really cared about who absolutely want nothing to do with me now. And that sucks. It really sucks. Like people who I really, really respected. Maybe we didn't talk very much, but we were at events sometimes, who maybe were supportive in other ways. Just not at all. And that really sucks. But that's also useful. That's also useful to know. That's very useful to know. I would rather know than not know. I did get a little bit of hate mail, but there wasn't a ton. There were people.
Better not be out there sending that hate mail. You will be on my permanent shit list.
Yes. There were like a couple weird hate mails too, of sort of like, you should have left this private, like, which is like the worst kind of argument possible. You know what I mean? It's sort of like you're right, but you shouldn't have talked about it, which is like way weirder than just like, I think you're lying or whatever, right? But like,
and that's the attitude that gets right to the heart of the issue, right. Too. You know, like, okay, I know, but I won't say anything. Yes. That kind of thing.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, but
no.
Yeah, but in general, like, and again, the people and there were some people who were like, oh, Bat's just lying or crazy or whatever, and I'm like, look, you could think whatever you want. Like, may the truth win out. Like, may the truth like stand on its own. But there were a lot of people who were very supportive also, which I really appreciate. And ironically, I think in terms of spirituality, like, I actually think my relationship with Odin deepened from this, which is, I say ironically, just because she's a very well-known
wrote a book.
Yes. She's very well known in terms of worshiping Odin. I think that that I am also grateful about that, like, in terms of spirit stuff. Loki, of course, was just my everything during times of upheaval. But I think in terms of communication and also, like speech communication, wanting to make sure that I was getting across what I was trying to get across, I actually think that I felt comforted by it and closer to Odin, which surprised me. But I am grateful for that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I love that for you.
Yeah. And a bunch of Odin people also helped me out too, right? Which also helped. Like, a bunch of humans who are very close to Odin were really, really supportive.
I dig it. Yeah. I love that. Mm-hmm. That's the best part of the story.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, from the bottom of my heart and every part of my soul, I thank you for your willingness to stand on integrity in the face of something that had to be incredibly hard.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even begin to imagine how hard that all must have felt to you privately in the quietest moments, and you still did it because you have that kind of integrity. That I could not be more proud of you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I do think I've had a couple people very kindly, like in the most well-intended way, be like, wow, I could never do that. Like, that was amazing. And I'm like, you know what? I think all of us can, right? Like, I think like really hard things. I'm not super special about it. Like if that makes sense, right? Like, it was really hard. I'm very glad I did it. I was in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time, or some combination of that, however you want to look at it. But I do think that it's something that everybody can do and probably should do. It just takes practice. It sucks, but it takes practice. But
I can't say, as someone who survived a form of physical violence abuse growing up, a lot of people knew. No one said anything. That's the heart of this whole issue. Is people who know but don't say anything and still support the abuser in some way to center the abuser's needs. That's the heart of all of this.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now that if you're listening to this, if I hope nothing ever happened to you, but if it did, then, I hope you find your way through all of that terrible ordeal and free yourself from anything. If you're in it, please seek help and resources. Yeah. But if you are someone who knows it's happening to someone else, I beg of you to find the courage to say something. It matters so much.
It does. It does. And even if, and here, this is always my thing too, like, even if for this kind of situation, for any situation of injustice, oppression, abuse, anything, even if you don't think you can stop it, even if you don't think you'll be successful at eliminating violence from the world, that's a very difficult task, right? Like, I don't, like, that doesn't matter as much as letting people know that it's not okay and you're going to stand up, even if you can't, even if you're unsuccessful at fully helping someone, whatever, like, it'll just help people not feel alone. They'll feel like somebody gives a shit and is going to say something, even if it fails, even if nothing happens, nobody gets accountability. You're still helping. You're still helping by telling somebody who's experiencing something like, hey, that's fucked up. It's not right. And I know that, and I'm going to speak up for you.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was a heavy topic, huh? Yeah. Yeah. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Okay. All right. I think that's a good spot to move into the Patreon portion.
Yes.
I didn't want to put that behind a paywall. It's only $5, people. So was there anything you wanted to talk about or get into that we didn't talk about yet?
Oh man. I mean, there's always a million
thing that's going to be in the Patreon portion.
Okay. There's a billion things. I will say, whether it's at Patreon or some other time, like, I do a lot of Norse stuff. I do a lot of stuff these days with like traditional fairy lore, and like that's a whole other topic.
That's fun.
It's a whole other topic.
That's a whole other topic.
But yeah, that's all I got for now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a blast. And people can go to, was it batcollazo.com?
Correct. Yeah. BATCOLLAZO.com.
.com.
Yeah. And I kind of deleted most of my social media stuff. So that's about the best place to find me. That or write me a handwritten letter and send it with a magical pigeon or something and hope it finds me.
There you go. Send ravens.
Crows.
Yes.
Ravens and or crows and or pigeons.
I get over my tattoo on my forearm.
Yes.
People are like, I love that raven. I'm like,
we didn't talk about my tattoos. We're going to. Okay. All right.
We're going to. There's a good teaser.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, you're going to have to go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. It's the price of buying me a coffee, friends, and it's a huge help to keeping this show going. So please do consider joining the membership, and stay weird out there. And now it's bonus audio time.
Nice.
Matt, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. First question is always the same.
Okay.
What famous person's resting place would you most want to visit and why?
Okay. So I cheated a little bit because I heard you ask other people this, like in the teaser.
That's right.
And I'm struggling. I was struggling to come up with an answer.
They don't have to be celebrity famous, like TV or music or anything. They can be famous in just your history. Like my answer to this always is Pamela Coleman Smith.
Oh yeah. Nice. Yeah.
And no one's entirely exactly sure where she's buried.
Yeah.
Marcus Katz and Tally Goodwin think they have narrowed it down to a small churchyard in England, but
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one I would like to
She makes total sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going a little bit famous, but the first person I could think of, right? So I'll just go with that. First instinct is,
do you want to hear
how they just answered that question. What famous person's resting place would you most like to visit? That and many others, including what they think about the afterlife, what they may or may not do in cemeteries, what are their traditions and magical practices that have to do with the dead, folklore that surrounds their homes, and so much more, available for only $5. $5 a month. Even if I make more than one episode in a month, it's still just $5 a month at patreon.com/weirdwebradio, or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. You can find me on Instagram at weirdwebradio. You can find me on Facebook as Weird Web Radio, or come join the new, fun, and exciting Weird Web Radio Facebook group. Thank you again for being here. Stay weird out there, my friends.